So it's time to talk about the metaverse. Last week, Meta, the parent company behind Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, made a pretty significant announcement.
Meta Platforms is laying off 13% of its workforce, or more than 11,000 employees.
The largest job cuts in the company's history.
This is huge for a company like Meta, has not undertaken something like this in the past.
CEO Mark Zuckerberg told staff that 13% of the headcount, or 11,000 people, would have to go. In a statement, Zuckerberg took responsibility for the job losses, saying that at the start of COVID, the world rapidly moved online and the surge of e-commerce led to outsized revenue growth. Or in other words, when we were all sitting at home during the pandemic, Meta was making more money. And now that things are returning to normal, Meta's making less money. And that's a bit of a problem. During the past year, Meta's share price has been on a massive decline. It's down now 70% on what it was when the company was Facebook. So what is causing this decline? Is it because of Zuckerberg's vision that Facebook should become Meta and Meta should be focused on the metaverse, something that isn't its core business? Or is there something else going on here? Will Meta's big bet on the metaverse actually pay off?
When people invested in Meta, say 5 years ago, the idea is that you were invested in the social media giant, the so-called gatekeeper of that market. And what would happen is that when a new company would arrive at the market, Meta would just fork some hundreds of millions, buy it, and then integrate it into its ecosystem. And the way Meta is making money, they're just selling one thing, like all the income of Meta is advertising.
Over the past few years, Meta has been struggling to build its audience. Facebook already has market saturation, and younger audiences are less inclined to join the platform, preferring other platforms like TikTok. So Mark Zuckerberg has a pretty massive challenge ahead. Meta can't just buy TikTok, it would be far too expensive for even them to purchase, and they need to stay ahead. So the problem becomes, should Meta as a company build for the market they have now and all the Facebook users that depend on them? Or should they create a new market, one that they can dominate in the years ahead?
So in the mindset of Mark Zuckerberg is this metaverse idea, so everyone wearing VR headsets and living in this, augmented reality social media. I have no idea. To me, it sounds a bit crazy, but that's his bet. But he has to bet on something. He cannot just wait to be eaten alive by somebody else, some 19-year-old high school dropout who will come up with a better idea somewhere in the West and will replace him. So he has to put the money somewhere. So Facebook Meta investors are extremely upset by that. There are a lot of letters from shareholders. It's like, why are you throwing, I think, already $100 billion into the metaverse? And I think the answer is, you need to do something, and that's the best he can come up with at the moment. If you have a better idea, I think, drop him an email. In the meantime, that's all he can do.
Obviously, a part of this issue that they've had in the past 12 months is also related to data, and Apple's really clamping down when it comes to privacy and data sharing, which is unsurprising given some of the issues that Facebook suffered in the past with Cambridge Analytica, etc. Do you think that that companies like Facebook, social media giants, will find it increasingly difficult to monetize personal data?
Yeah, for different reasons. One of them, as you said, is the push for transparency. So of course, from Apple, it's a bit strategic. They care about the transparency of the others, not about their own transparency. And in the end, it's all like, a big war of attrition for this advertising income. Apple is mostly fighting on the same turf as Facebook. They do something completely different, but the money they want is the same, is the money from advertisement. And so the more Apple makes the lack of transparency of the others prominent, the more they can use it for themselves. That's one part. But then more generally, at the same time that there has been a push in terms of competition authority about abuse of dominant position, there has been a big push on the transparency of the use of data and what you are allowed and not allowed to do, what consent of the consumers involved. And this is a very touchy subject, no? Because it's one of those so-called Brussels effect, where the European Commission decide, like for 350 million people what is called a GDPR, so they have all those very specific rules on content, and what you can use with data and consent, and it applies to every major international company that wants to operate in Europe. So you have those websites somewhere in the US that have to comply to GDPR, and there is a lot of research about that, thinking that even in terms of innovation, it might actually be something that is not that good, because when you launch a new product, you know that it's more complicated to monetize that. But then, if the way you make money is by abusing consent of people, is it actually a good idea? Like, it's complicated. How do you measure consent? And there is, again, a lot of research on what it means. And as far as I know, there is no settled conclusion, because asking everyone to click a button saying, I consent all the time is tedious, it's annoying. Not asking it is also a problem. So how do you do it? What is the best way to frame that? It's going to be key to understand how people can monetize. So how much do you value getting a service for free versus paying for it?
I mean, you've argued that this drop in value for Meta could actually be a good thing. Can you maybe just give me sort of like the cliff notes of like why this actually could be a good thing?
Well, so you see the tip of the iceberg with TikTok. TikTok is something that I think would never have happened if it were a Western company, because it's too close to what Facebook was doing with Instagram. It's about, say, young people playing with their image, recording videos, etc. So maybe this could have happened, but the impression is that this is the kind of technology that could have been relatively easily bought and integrated in the system. I gave you the example of Waze with the map technology. So Google Map, maybe you like it, but maybe you think like there could be some form of improvement. It could be improved, except that it's not going to happen because it's not really contestable. Like it's too complicated to take over, and they buy everything to integrate into that system. So the question you need to ask yourself is, when you look at the current offer, what difference would it make to have the possibility of actually innovative products coming in? Most economists would agree that it's a good idea to have competition and to let new ideas come in freely and see whether users adopt it. And let's say that in the past, to be able to become the leader, you had to be so much better than the previous one. It was never impossible, but you had to be so much better. If the new world, the one in which it seems that Facebook value has collapsed because the market seemed to be contestable, and if this new world is just enough to be a bit better, then you might have room for a lot of small improvements, a lot of better technologies coming in, simply because young investors feel like motivated to invest because they have a chance to actually win. What is your dream when you begin a startup? Is it to grow as quick as possible and then sell it to the existing giant? That's been quite the business model of the last 20 years. Or is it to actually become big yourself, to actually deliver the new generation of a product, the new radical innovation that will change the experience of people? I think it should be good news for consumers, unless you believe that what you have at the moment is truly the best possible experience of social media.
If you listen to Meta, we're all going to be working and spending most of our time in these virtual environments. For workers, it could potentially mean you just put on a headset and then you get your entire workstation right in front of you. No need to have screens and other devices. All you would need is a headset. To double down on this idea that we could be working in the metaverse, Meta announced a partnership with Microsoft to bring Microsoft's 365 products across to virtual reality.
The main reason that we're in this space is that we think that VR can be very powerful for social connection. And with the Quest Pro, we want to bring more of that into the work context as well.
The other thing that was of interest is that global consulting business Accenture announced that they've purchased 60,000 Quest devices for staff around the world. And when new staff begin at the company, they'll be onboarded in a VR experience called the Nth Floor. And Accenture say that staff who are trained in the metaverse actually retain more information.
We believe that the metaverse will not only change how people work, it will also profoundly change every part of every business.
So I think the big challenge for Meta is going to be how to explain what the metaverse even is. Because I think talking about the idea of working in this virtual environment, that's not probably as appealing as Meta believes it is. I don't think people are going to want to put on a headset and then work on, their Word document or Excel spreadsheet in this virtual environment, at least in the short term. And I think the big issue that the company faces is explaining what this is and how you actually use it. And one of the experiences that you can have on the Quest Pro is called Spatial Fusion, and it's made by a company called Foria that's based in Melbourne in Fitzroy.
But right now I'm in mixed reality pass-through mode, so I can actually see you through the two cameras here coming out, and so that gives me the ability, rather than VR going somewhere else and jumping into the metaverse, we can actually start overlaying all the content in the physical world. So I've got like my website panels in front of me. I can have 3 different screens set up. So I've jumped onto spatialfusion.io, which is a new WebXR application that we launched with Meta just the other week at Meta Connect. And the goal effectively was to look at some new possibilities in terms of what's possible for storytelling in mixed reality over the web. And so what's happening now is I've got these little pulses coming out all around me, kind of runs off the surfaces of the walls and stuff. And literally right where you're standing, a portal's just opened up, and then all this like space debris starts shooting out, like bouncing off the walls and stuff like that.
So Foria as a company basically focuses on these mixed reality experiences, and I have to say Spatial Fusion is one of the most interesting and immersive mixed reality experiences that I've tried. It's a really impressive feat considering it's all using the WebXR platform, and the new Quest Pro allows developers to control the immersion experience, which helps give you some perspective on the space that you're actually in.
Cool, I love that. It's so interesting as a, like practical use case of how this could work.
Yeah, mixed reality is definitely a new frontier. It's still really very much early days in terms of what's possible. We've seen some amazing mixed reality experiences in the past. Our favorite one here at Foria is one from Magic Leap called Tanundi. And what's really quite awe-inspiring is there's elements where the headset actually scans and maps out your environment. And so the first benefit in mixed reality is a contextual experience, right? So you literally can weave your surrounding environment into the narrative. And so in Tanundi, all these little coral-looking creatures start growing off your chairs and on the table, and stuff starts glowing on your walls. And so that overlay and extension on top of the real world around you is really special. It kind of connects you to the fact that you are in this environment, but now this augmentation of all this rich immersive content on top of it is magical. Other pieces that I think make it really key, so it is a new frontier, so from a user's perspective it's not the most intuitive, it's not like tap to continue on your phone. You're now in this open environment, so how do you create like a really simple linear user journey that makes it straightforward for anyone, whether it's your grandparents or some children, to pick up this experience and jump through? And so having little simple novel interactions, so in Spatial Fusion, you click and you grab objects and you can fling them around, really straightforward. You've got to fix this fusion reactor by spinning it, so they're just simple little novel pieces in which you can actually like interact with the objects around you. And then I think the last piece is actually just like a sense of realism. So trying to find a art direction that feels the form is actually kind of embedded within your space. You don't want to look at something that's so blaringly obvious that it isn't a real object. And so how do you have lighting and reflections and textures that feel like it's a little bit embedded in situ? And so I think once those experiences become much more seamlessly melded, where it feels like you are interacting with an object in your physical space, it's going to be much more compelling, I think, for the users and how they can actually harness mixed reality as a new medium.
So I think one of the big questions still is, how are we all going to use these devices in the future? Because while these experiences are great and they help tell the story of what the metaverse is, how will it actually integrate into our lives? Are we going to all be putting on a headset and then working in a virtual environment, a mixed reality workspace all day every day of the week. I'm not sure if I can see that perspective just yet. Or will we be, all owning a headset and then we'll just use it when we want to play a game or we want to, visualize something in 3D? So this is a question that I put to Trent, and I thought he had a pretty interesting perspective on it.
Today we're seeing about 16 million Quest 2 VR headsets in circulation, so it's definitely, not at the level of billions of mobile devices, right? But we're seeing a comparable market penetration as you would like a gaming console. And so it's not necessarily the product or device for everyone, but I think if you're a gamer or you're actually into some of these new avenues, it's kind of opening up some different applications. So some of the practical use cases that we're seeing emerging, one really beautiful one that I wouldn't have anticipated, but is VR fitness. So people are actually using it to have, much more immersive workouts. So you can think about, I could watch something, like a home aerobics video, or I could have the instructor in front of me and I actually have hand tracking or all these actual much more spatial devices attached to me to then actually have much more interaction and agency in the type of workout. So I think exercise is a really interesting space. Another is like productivity. So Meta's coming out really hard at the moment to try and paint a picture of what the future of work looks like. And I think off the back of the pandemic, where we've realized that we can effectively do our jobs from anywhere, decoupled or untethered, from the office is really exciting. It won't be long until someone's at a cafe multitasking over a coffee. I think where we want to take it as a studio is we don't expect there to be, a device in everyone's homes. We don't think everyone's going to have a headset in the short term. So what we think the avenues are, if you look at really simply enterprise, but more so in the space where it has the greatest impact. So I think like education is going to have a profound benefit received from these immersive tools. My wife's a doctor, and so we've tried examples where we've loaded up, a whole skeleton, and you've been able to pull apart all the bones and look at the actual relevant terms. You can then shrink down to a blood cell and go through the bloodstream and have a much more, embodied experience of the journey of what happens to the heart through your body. Beyond that, as a company, where we'll be taking it here in Borea is we call them location-based experiences. And so unless you're playing a game, you really probably won't be on a headset every single day. And so if you could actually come to a destination the same way you do to an escape room or to the movies, but now you're having this much more immersive experience. So we're seeing it where there's a lot of projection mapping in different installations, but you could put on a headset and then all of a sudden, you're diving in the Great Barrier Reef and there's, a whale swimming above you, or you could be out in, the most remote rainforest in Queensland, learning about the biodiversity. And so I think the power to have an immersive experience is really profound. I don't think everyone needs a headset. And so I think the novelty is in a sweet position where people will have these destinations that they'll go to have these transformative experiences. And that's all you really need. You don't need to have it on your face every single day, but I think it has the capacity to really inspire, individuals in a really magical way. And so that's something that we, are actively working towards at the moment.
So, will this all pay off? I don't really know, but it'll be interesting to watch it all happen. That's all for today. So if you enjoyed the video, then just hit subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye.